What's a conversation you've had with someone telling a story when you realize halfway through they are the butt in the story? Just the other day, I explained to a customer how my father-in-law had to dredge out his pond, so we caught as many of his bass and bluegills and took buckets of fish to other pond owners in the area rather than killing them during dredging. The other guys were very happy about the new stock, and would let us fish their ponds after that. Well, the customer then says he knows the area, but doesn't like the people because they don't let him fish. I asked if he got permission, and he said, well, no now, if you're like me, you're thinking this is when I find out this guy is an butt. And, yeah, but not just what a completely pox-ridden butt. He goes on to tell me that he backed his truck up so the bed was in the water, and used a net to fill the bed of the truck with fish. He wonders why he gets chased off and people holler at him. I'm wondering why nobody had shot the fluffer. It's customary to just take a meal, and catch and release the rest. TLDR, butt empties ponds of fish and thinks everyone else is the butt. I met a bubbly girl in one of my classes who seemed nice, very chatty. She was complaining about her aunt, who wanted her to stop doing something. It went something like, my aunt doesn't understand how tough breakups are. So true, it's normal to want to know what your ex is doing. Yeah, I think a lot of people have been there. He and I still talk. AWH, that's nice. He keeps telling me to stay away from his new girlfriend, who he's just using to make me jealous. Oh, he's been playing hard to get for a year now. I'm so sick of these ups and downs. Okay, our relationship was the best 2 weeks of my life and he keeps pretending it never happened. Turned out her aunt was telling her to stop driving past his house at night. My friend was telling me about him getting revenge on his ex after they broke up due to cheating. He didn't actually do anything, but he told me about how he wanted to egg her car or house or something, mess with her new boyfriend, etc. I thought that in itself was a bit buddy to start with, but I thought everyone sucked since she cheated on him. About halfway through he drops me the knowledge that he was the one that cheated. My grandmother was a real boss of a person. Her favorite story to tell was of when she was a little girl. Her best friend in the whole world got the most beautiful porcelain doll for her birthday. The doll had long shiny blonde hair and eyes so blue they were like glaciers. My grandmother really wanted to play with the doll, but it was porcelain and her friend wouldn't let her play with it. Instead she put it in her glass doll cabinet to keep her safe. Well, this made my grandmother so furious she was shaking. At this point in the story, my grandmother's eyes would just light up with glee and she would just laugh and giggle as she told the rest of the story, like it was the funniest thing in the world. So my grandmother waited until her best friend fell asleep, and she quietly took that doll out of the glass cabinet. She snuck outside into the woods behind their houses and dug a hole and threw the doll in it, smashed the doll's pretty porcelain face, and buried her. Then she went back to her friend's house, climbed back in bed and went to sleep. My grandmother was so proud that she never did tell her friend what happened to the doll. She said if she couldn't play with the doll then her friend couldn't either. I first heard this story as a little girl, and even then I thought me grandmother was a boss. She told this story over and over clear up until she died, like it was some badge of honor she was proud of. Guy is devastated because his wife took the kids and left him. Basically begging her to come back. She went to a homeless shelter, which made me feel weird, so I asked why she would feel the need to leave to a homeless shelter. He said because she's crazy. I said well, what was the reason she gave? That's when it came out that he was an alcoholic and had been spending all the money on cab rides, booze and cigarettes, and that he had been verbally abusive and once physically, but he thought she was just his fault because she bought organic peanut butter. I was like, man, I'm not going to tell you how to get her back, you're just sorry that you lost her, not for anything you've done, but yeah, I always keep my ears out now for those stories that sound one-sided. Deleted. Girl complaining that her ex-husband was paranoid about the idea of her having a crush on this other guy while they were still married, but then later revealed she did indeed have a crush on that guy and started dating him immediately after telling her husband she was going to file for divorce. It was a weird conversation. She was saying it in the "can you believe my ex-husband accused me of that" kind of way. And I'm just sitting there like, but you just told me he was right, that you had long been checking the other guy out before your husband even said anything. I was confused what this girl was trying to accomplish in this conversation. Deleted. My mom had a rough divorce from my dad that stayed with her mentally for years. Told a story about how she noticed a car in front of her on a long narrow road was trying to get away from her. I thought, oh no, how can you tell a car in front of you is trying to get away from you, unless you're following them, but I let her continue. Mom's talking about how she's trying to drive closer just because she's curious who the other driver is, not because she's following her. Nope, says she loses the car but for whatever reason needs to pull over, and decides to pull over behind the only grocery store in town, you know, like a normal person totally does, and, surprise, there's the car. Mom was so surprised that it was my dad's new wife, and that she had the nerve to accuse my mom of stalking her. I let her finish and calmly told her that I of course totally believe her, that I understood that she accidentally chased someone down for miles, but to never ever tell that story to anyone else. I had a friend who I thought I knew fairly well. I was excited when we first met because we were similar in a lot of ways. One day she texted me and told me to report this guy on Instagram and says he's a huge butt. Not wanting to pry for details, wanting to be a supportive friend, and believing she was a sensible girl like myself, I immediately blocked him. I was thinking he harassed her. Then she told me the story over dinner one night. She found him on Tinder, Bumble, stalked all of his social media profiles and his family's, went through his photos, thought about it for 5 days, then finally sent him a message about skiing, because she found a couple photos of him skiing on his Facebook. He unmatched with her, because it is weird she would know he went skiing in Colorado with his sister. He unmatches with her. She then goes to his social media and sends him a whole rant about how horrible he is, he's stuck up, thinks he can do whatever he wants because he's hot, etc. As she told me this story my mouth was on the ground. She was the psycho girl from Tinder you hear about from your friends. I instantly felt bad that I reported him as spam, though it probably didn't do anything anyways. Well, I don't know if she created a new profile or they just matched again, but they matched again a couple weeks later. She sent a super creepy message about how she's back and remember me. After that part I began to drift from her. Clearly she was not the one I would want to go for romance advice. A guy in my college friend group was talking about a party he went to with his boys and spent about 10 minutes talking about this really annoying girl and all the shenanigans she was up to. He then wrapped up the story by saying that girl got really drunk and passed out, so him and his friends decided to take turns raping her. He didn't use the word rape, he said something along the lines of taking turn having happy fun time with her. I had to stop that dude and make it very clear to him that it was rape. He disagreed and we fought about it. I stopped being friends with him immediately, but our group continued hanging out with him as usual. I then decided to ditch them completely and switched friend groups. Former friend was telling me about how she found out that her BF had a spanking fetish, but that she didn't want to spank him, she just wasn't into it. This sent her into a weird place where she was convinced someone else must be spanking him and that this gave her reason to go through his phone. She went through years of messages and all she found was that when they had first gone on a few dates, not dating, just a few dates, he also went on some other dates at the same time. Once they were exclusive he stopped. She told me this like, I caught him. I thought it was so messed up. She went through his phone and then yelled at him about it, trying to make him look like the bad guy so she could feel okay about breaking up with him. A guy was bragging about how he managed to get free food from a diner. He specifically went to one where you take the receipt to the cashier up front. Dude lied saying he left his wallet in his car, left the diner a fake car key with a fake ID, called an Uber and went home. In my head I was like, this butt. Underage girl from work was bragging about how she noticed a restaurant wasn't carding, so she ordered drinks, drank them, and reported the waiter to the manager on the way out for allowing it. Edit, this was in America, so drinking age is 21. She was like 19 or 20 out for dinner with her 21 plus BF. They may have even carded him but not her IIRC. She had nothing against the waiter. Miso runs an Etsy on and off, so when it comes up, she's often questioned about how people can do it themselves. She normally doesn't mind, so long as the time is right. She's going through this with one person, and how to promote their work. My partner mentions social media, showing the process, etc. The problem? She didn't own any of the images she was making prints of, she was just selling images of things she found and liked online, and just could not wrap her head around why it was so hard to advertise. Once had a friend with mental health problems. One day she goes over to my house and finds out I'm taking Zoloft because of depression. She wanted to try it. I said no because I felt like she may have something else, maybe bipolar E, etc., that can make her life worse. I said, why not talk to a therapist? She says, they keep shoving pills down my throat. I doubt she had to take as many as she described, but she was mentally messed up. I replied, okay, what did they try to give you? Zoloft and Xanax. Woman, that's what I'm taking minus the Xanax, but why not take therapy? Antidepressants don't make you happy, only lessens some symptoms. Because the therapist was a female doggy, she tells me she punched the therapist. Why? Because she was asking personal garbage. I don't need to tell her what my life is like, that's how they work. You have to open up about your problems. Her constant issues made me break off our friendship. A friend of my mom's was telling me how awful his neighbor was. He said she was loud, and I was like, okay, yeah, that can be annoying. He said he sent her a note saying her voice was obnoxious and cut through walls and was making him unable to take afternoon naps, and her kids pissed him off by being loud while playing during the day, and I was like, huh. Then he said their trees hung over the fence across his yard, so he cut off all the branches and threw them over the fence onto their lawn, and I was like, I'm pretty sure you're the butt here. Dude was basically that annoying, touchy, little old neighbor who gets annoyed by literally everything, and then passive-aggressively tries to get revenge. He had a few other stories about how awful his neighbors were too, and I can't remember them now, but he was the bad guy in all of them. He had no idea he was the jerk, he thought they were the jerks. I told my mom that he was the jerk in all his stories afterward, and she was like, pretty much, yes.